This episode of Wheat Pete's Word is brought to you by Syngenta. Growing wheat in Western Canada, Miravis Era fungicide for Fusarium combines two active ingredients and sets a higher standard for disease protection. And with Miravis Era, you're also getting excellent control of late-season leaf diseases. Visit syngenta.ca for more information.
Good day and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, July the 2nd. On this episode of the Word, Happy Canada Day! Happy Independence Day to our friends south of the border. A quick moment of reflection around that. Then, wild updates, cool learnings, and agronomy answers at the end of the tape until I once again run out of time. This is going to be fun. Let's go! And to start, a huge congratulations to Dr. Renie van Aker, the 10th president and vice chancellor of the University of Guelph. If you know Dr. van Aker, he is from agriculture. He is an agriculturalist. This is a huge win to have someone at the University of Guelph, which is an ag university, and to have someone as leading that university who is from agriculture. A huge win. Really looking forward to Dr. van Aker. Here is his address, or his mantra, if you will. It's simple. It's two words: forward together. Man, it brings everyone together. It's looking for it. I really love the simplicity and yet the focus and the inclusivity of that particular statement. On that, Clark from the Niagara Peninsula sending me a quick link to what his son Caleb is doing around nanotechnology. And man, when you think about forward, you hear that word lots. In fact, they use it to mislead, advertise, and a whole bunch of other things. But what Caleb is doing is working on nanotechnology with pesticides, with micronutrients, trying to find ways to use that technology to get plant uptake much, much better, get much better use efficiency. It's not at the marketplace yet, but wow, talk about forward. Clark, thanks for that. It's just way so cool. All right, moving on. And yes, Happy Canada Day, Happy Independence Day. Man, I hope you are all proud of the country you come from, because we live in incredible countries and we are ever so lucky. So a quick moment of reflection, because we often get lost in all the negativity out there, and there are lots of things wrong in this world. Don't misunderstand me. But we actually live in the best time in human history. Poverty is at historic lows. In 1990, that's only 35 years ago, in 1990, 36% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. Today, it is 9%. That's 1/4 of what it was just 35 years ago. That's an amazing, that's awesome. By the way, 9% of our world population living in extreme poverty is still unacceptable. We still have a ton of work to do there, but a lot of people are simply way better off. Our life expectancy, 1900, you could expect to live to be 50. Today, you can expect to live to be 82. Infectious diseases, again, in 1990, 37% of the deaths were attributed to infectious diseases. Today, we're down at 1.6%, which, by the way, vaccines are part of that, like it or not. And so, yeah, really, as my good friend Eric from Prince Edward Island sent to me on Canada Day, Paul's sending me a wonderful GIF as well by text. Just a whole bunch of people reached out on Canada Day, which is just really, really cool. But Eric's comment was, we are truly blessed, and we really are. Just before I move on, man, one last note. Things are not perfect everywhere. The war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza, there's just so many things going on. And I keep wondering why that has to happen. Every time you do something, just please remember this one simple teaching that's many different places it comes from. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I don't want anybody to shoot me, so I'm not going to shoot anybody. I wish more of us could live by that mantra. In any case, I do not mean to be a downer, because we live in a great time, and it's summertime here in Ontario, and things are absolutely wonderful. I hope you all enjoy your national holidays and are doing well. All right, let's move on. Mark sending me a quick note. An article that he read in the New York Times saying that arsenic in rice was, oh my gosh, it's gonna just kill people. It's just poison, and it's in rice. Meanwhile, Mark, he's from Delmarva, great agronomist there. He has been reading Timothy Caulfield's book, The Certainty Illusion, and yeah, his comment was, I read that article, and because I'm reading Caulfield's book, I have a high level of skepticism for the science reported in that article. Perfect. If all I can do through this is instill a level of skepticism that you step back and say, wait a minute, does that make sense? That's amazing. And by the way, that's true whether it's the New York Times article that Mark reads, or it's true if Wheat Pete says on the Word that X is true, and you go, that doesn't sound right. Have a high level of skepticism. I do my very best to have good science, but man, nobody is perfect. All right, and the other thing Mark did for me on Canada Day, he sent me his wheat. They got their wheat off. He sent me a picture of his yield monitor. Oh, his wheat didn't average this, but the yield monitor was 139.1 bushels per acre. Great quality. Meanwhile, in the yen, and this is so amazing that we've been able to get people into the field looking. So Warren sending a picture of a wheat head saying, I have 4 seeds that have developed at every spikelet. And Sean responding, 4, I have 5. And I'm going like, oh gosh, Deb Campbell saying, if you can get 4 per spikelet, almost for sure you have a big wheat yield. And I'm just going, 4, man. If I can get 3, I'm clearly a poor farmer. If I can get 3 per spikelet, I think I've done pretty doggone well. But the fact that people are in their fields, they're looking at this, they're assessing this, that is incredible. And it will make you, if you get to that level of detail, it will make you a better farmer because you're paying attention to that detail. Some other cool stuff. We often talk about knee-high by the 1st of July. Man, we had corn well over knee-high before the 1st of July. Seeded May 10th, had a number of people send me pictures. On June 20th, we were getting to that knee-high stage. So the corn crop, in general terms, is looking really, really good. However, I will say that as you drive around the countryside, can you ever see where growers have done their second side dress or their second nitrogen application, their side dress nitrogen application with urea? The amount of leaf burn we get that, it's ammonia toxicity. The urea prill goes down the whorl. That urea gets water, it turns into ammonia, and it burns that developing leaf, so the edges of the leaf come out on the next leaf or two, and they're burnt. It's ammonia burn. It's not salt injury. It's ammonia burn. And I hate that look. Oh, I know. It doesn't really impact yield, but I just hate looking at a burnt crop. I don't know, just something about me, but I just hate it. On the weather front, oh, yes, we had a tornado near Lucan where my farm is. Fortunately, not very much damage there. We've had reports of areas getting up to 8 inches of rainfall. Meanwhile, Donald from Udney and a caller from Woodville both call in saying, what are you talking about, all this rain? We're critically dry. The grower from Woodville saying, I finished my hay earlier than ever before. Didn't get a drop of rain. It's so dry here that, things are just really starting to suffer. Donald's saying that the later planted soybeans and edible beans, where growers worked the soil too much, dried it out, we're not even getting enough moisture to germinate those beans. And that all sounds really bad until you go on Twitter and you read a tweet by Dan from Idaho. And it's really dry in Idaho because in his mid-row band where he put his fertilizer, he can dig down and the fertilizer prills are still in prill form in that dust. There has not been enough moisture to dissolve those prills, and the crop is just, it looks like the crop has the measles or something like that. It's just unbelievably variable. Wow, that is dry. So the other interesting thing that is starting to show up in these really dry areas, it makes good sense when you think about it, but in soils with excellent potash levels, we are already starting to see some potash deficiency in the soybeans where it is dry. And what happens when you get really, really dry conditions is that even with lots of potash in the soil, the clays clamp down on that potash and basically make it unavailable. And so it's the one time where even at high soil test levels, a bit of potash in the starter can sometimes help because it will still be available. It won't be trapped in that clay. But it also, in many cases, suggests that, yes, you might be potash deficiency. So check your beans. If you're seeing that potash deficiency, then absolutely you should be worried about it. And the other thing we're seeing, and under dry conditions makes perfect sense, is manganese in soybeans. If you're seeing manganese deficiency, that interveinal chlorosis, foliar applies some manganese sulfate. It will correct that deficiency. Much easier to correct a manganese deficiency than a potash deficiency because it does not take very much manganese to do that job. All right, move on here quickly. Eric, talking about his winter barley, and just to show the differences in years. Last year at this time, Eric was done winter barley harvest and had all the double crop soybeans and edible beans, whatever he was planting, planted. This year, the winter barley is barely ready for pre-harvest glyphosate to try to bring it along and speed up that harvest. And Chad, meanwhile, Chad's further south in the breadbasket to South Lambton. He has already started winter barley harvest. And one of the comments Chad has was, well, we are low input winter barley farmers. We don't use fungicides, and that probably speeds our harvest up by 3 or maybe 4 days. And I think that's fair. But at the end of the day, what it means is that for a lot of growers here in Ontario, we are going to have a lot less double crop options. I don't think there'll be much double crop planted after wheat this year as opposed to last year where we all thought that was a good idea. It worked out for some people, but looking like a totally different year this year. Joe sending me a picture after all the rain that went through of his lodged wheat, and it's like, he just says, the joys of growing wheat. Well, first, Joe, I will say that poor wheat doesn't lodge, but the other part of that is that we can only stand so much. Even corn will only stand so much wind. And some of the storms, these thunderstorm cells that go through, you get a lot of rainfall. Once you get that really saturated soil, if you have high winds, the soil no longer offers the support. You could have a great root system, but the soil is so saturated that wind blast just basically tips the crop out of the soil because the soil has no structural stability. And in those cases, we get corn will lodge. In fact, in Indiana, I talked about this earlier, there was a lot of corn that got flattened by big winds after a heavy rainstorm. So that can happen. In your case, though, Joe, is a really, really cool picture. I think we'll include it in the post because it drives the point home. The wheat is lodged every which way. So you clearly had winds blowing from every direction when you had that wet soil, and it just, it'll be a bit of a nightmare to harvest. Sorry about your luck. But I come back to my original statement. poor wheat does not lodge. All right, I want to move on and do some agronomy answers stuff. So first off, Adam's saying, Peter, we're talking about soybean aphids, and we're out scouting for soybean aphids. Adam scouts with me, just a super sharp guy. But he says, you know, back when I used to work in industry, there was a pretty clear link that if you used an insecticide on your soybeans, you would not get these early soybean aphid infestations. And so great point, Adam, and I should have talked about this last week. If you have an insecticide seed treatment on your soybeans, it lasts for about 60 days, give or take. That's kind of the general consensus. You planted your soybeans on the 10th of May. That is starting to run out now. So your aphid population currently should be quite low, but you do need to start scouting. If you are like Wheat Pete and you don't plant insecticide-treated soybeans, you better look at your soybean. We actually pulled the trigger to spray my soybeans with Safina because we were at threshold with our aphid population. And you might say, well, why don't you treat your seed with insecticide? Well, that's the first year that I have had to treat my soybeans for aphids since, I think, 2007. And it's so not treating with an insecticide in an area that doesn't get regular pressure from things like soybean aphids, I think makes perfect sense. Meanwhile, there are other insects out there, and Luke's saying, oh my gosh, my no-till soybeans are just, the amount of leaf damage that is out there is unbelievable. And you're absolutely right, Luke. There are lots of things going on out there. We have bean leaf beetle. I'm starting to see Japanese beetle now. There are grasshoppers. So lots of leaf injury, lots of leaf feeding in some of these fields, but almost never over threshold. Leaf injury, leaf damage from insects, it looks horrendous. But when you actually scan the leaf, when you actually step back and say, well, wait a minute, like all those holes in that soybean leaf, what percentage of that soybean leaf is actually gone? Those numbers are way lower than what it initially looks like. So no recommendation yet to control for leaf feeding insects, but absolutely recommendations. In fact, alert, 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 scout for soybean aphids if you did not use that insecticide treated seed. And while I'm on soybeans, lots of questions starting to come in about timing of fungicides on soys. I think most of you know if you're one application, we typically would say that R2 to R2.5. So R2 is an open flower on 75% of the plants on the upper two nodes. R1 is an open flower anywhere on the plant on 75% of the plants. And R3 is when we see a pod starting to form on one of the top four nodes. And you come back and you say, okay, if I'm going to do two applications because I'm in Eastern Ontario and I have high white mold pressure, yep, two applications. You're going to go at kind of that R1.5, R2 stage probably and come back 10 days to 2 weeks later. If you're not in a high white mold pressure, you're saying R2.5, we're going to hit that stage. Yeah, okay, back up just 2 steps. Because lots of times we talk about these stages, but canopy really plays. And an awesome study out of North Dakota that clearly showed that you need full canopy closure to really be under heavy white mold pressure or even just expect the best possible return out of that fungicide application. So, if you are dealing with fully canopied conventional soybeans that are lush and tall, they're in 7.5-inch rows, and you hit R1 and they're full canopy covered, you can't see any soil whatsoever, yeah, maybe it's time to think about using that fungicide or certainly by R2. If on the other hand, you're no-till and that canopy is slower and the stand might be a little bit thinner, you can wait later to apply that fungicide because the amount of canopy closure makes a huge difference in terms of when you get great response to that fungicide. Scott asking about oat dormancy, saying, okay, Peter, it's a late year, no chance for double crop. We're going to grow oats as a cover crop. I am growing some oats for my own cover crop seed. Can I harvest the oats, take them right off the combine, put them in the drill, plant them, and get them to grow. And so, Scott, the answer is that oats do sometimes have dormancy. We get caught occasionally. But if you really let those oats get super dry, so they get down to 13% at least once before you harvest them, then we rarely run into any issues. You can combine them, you can plant them, they'll grow right away again. If you happen to combine them at 17%, because you want to get them out of the field to get that cover crop planted, and you plant them at 17% because you're putting them right in the ground, yeah, that can definitely be an issue. So there is oat dormancy. Mostly we can break it. Next, crabgrass. Lots of fields showing crabgrass escapes coming in soybeans, in edible beans. Be very careful. Crabgrass is not that hard to kill most of the time, but we have identified crabgrass that is resistant to the group 1 FOP chemistry. So within the group 1 graminicides, there are the FOPs and there are the DIMs. In this case, the crabgrass has become resistant to the FOPs, so things like Assure and Venture will no longer work. The DIMs, things like clethodim, so Select, or Post, Cisoxidum, they will still work on that crabgrass. There's not that much of it out there, but if you spray your crabgrass with one of the FOPs and you don't get control, be highly suspicious that it's actually resistant, and we may have to switch chemistries within the same family, which is really interesting, to get that control. Ryan and Chris having a great discussion with me on sulfur on soys. So Chris sending some pictures saying, well, left side of the flag is sulfur, right side of the flag is sulfur. Can you see a difference? I can't see a difference. And mentioning this to Horst Bond of the soybean lead, Horst says, oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of people pretty disappointed with their results from sulfur on soybeans if my history has anything to say about it. Meanwhile, Ryan, another great agronomist in Lambton County, has a sulfur trial where you can visually see the difference already. And when it was sprayed with Ultra Blazer, much less herbicide injury where the sulfur was applied than where it was applied on the no sulfur treatment soybeans. And you just back up, and this gets into this whole discussion again, which I think is phenomenally interesting, of plant health and additive stresses. So in Ryan's case, it looks like the sulfur is having an impact. Those plants were healthier. They tolerated the Ultra Blazer better. In Chris's case, it's just not working. So really great trials that we're going to learn lots from. I'm just ever so impressed and having fun with that one as well. All right, I'm going to finish up on residue one more time. Isaac saying, okay, Peter, answer me this. Neighbor, soybeans, corn 2024, 5 acres taken for silage, the rest taken for grain, the whole field disked in the spring, soybeans planted. That 5 acres where they took the silage corn off, man, it is greener, it is lusher, it is taller, there are less weeds, and there is no volunteer corn, versus where the grain corn is, man, they are shorter, they aren't as dark green, there's tons of volunteer corn, and there's a few more weeds as well. So is that, like, what's happening from that perspective? And so, Isaac, I think you're 100% right. The corn residue ties up the nitrogen. As soon as you tie up that nitrogen, it doesn't mean the soybeans will yield less. You have to be really clear on this. But tied up nitrogen, you get slower early growth. You have to wait for those nodules to form and start manufacturing nitrogen for the soybean crop, whereas where you don't have the residue, there is free nitrogen in the soybean, or in the soil rather, the soybean can use. The blacker soil is also going to be warmer. That's going to stimulate early growth. The volunteer corn question is easy because in the silage, the corn wasn't fully mature, and you likely got every cob because you're taking the whole plant. In the grain corn, maybe some of it lodged before harvest. If it was a silage variety, for sure that could happen. Maybe some cobs bounced out. But you take that corn cob and you don't touch it in the fall, and you work it into the soil in the spring, oh yeah, you can have volunteer corn. There's no question about that. The weed pressure, well, that's a good question. There's lots of things going on there. But at the end of the day, it's a range of things that come into play. In the fall, residue is your friend. It protects from erosion, both wind and water, and without tillage, you get no tillage erosion. In the spring, residue is the enemy. And so Bill sending a great picture, just phenomenally interesting. He's got 6 rows of good corn, 3 rows of bad, but only in his cornfield where he had 270 bushel corn last year, where he had 230 bushel corn, all of his corn on corn looks fine. So first off, Bill, I'm not a corn on corn guy. I think you know that. But at the end of the day, what's happened for Bill is that where the combine and the buggy ran and tramped down the corn stalks last fall, when he came in with his strip till unit this year, he was able to push that residue out of the row area and strip till into clean, no residue strips where it wasn't tramped. And this is a phenomenally interesting outcome where it wasn't tramped, that residue still standing up. He just couldn't get the strip till unit, the residue managers, to aggressively take that residue and move it out of the row area. You can see in those strips that there's lots of residue in the row area, and man, those corn plants are hammered. Only happened in the 270 bushel residue. Lots more residue in 270 bushel than there is in 230 bushel residue corn. This residue thing is just incredibly interesting. And I have talked way longer than normal. People keep saying, Peter, just finish it. We don't care how long it goes. So there you go, 26 minutes. That's it. That's all. On behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture, this is Wheat Pete with the Word for Wednesday, the 2nd of July. I hope you're having a great week. I hope you'll leave lots of questions and lots of comments. We'll talk to you next week. See you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wheat Pete's Word, brought to you by Syngenta. Miravis Era fungicide sets a higher standard for Western cereal disease protection with 2 powerhouse active ingredients for fusarium head blight and late-season leaf diseases. Make this your golden era with Miravis Era and earn Western Partner Program rewards on qualifying purchases. Visit syngenta.ca/partner program to calculate your rewards today.